Wales and Africa commissioned this piece of research about involving disabled people in the Wales-Africa sector. And it's quite a niche piece of research. It's been very interesting, but it's also been quite challenging from a research perspective to engage disabled people with that project. But thank you very much to all those of you who did get involved, because it made a massive difference. And I know that Donald, who's over there from Disability in Wales and Africa, the partners in that project, which was DWA, Disability Wales, and also Hub Cymru Africa, have already been looking at the research recommendations and talking about their next steps. So really what they wanted to get to grips with was, why are the levels of participation of disabled people in the Wales-Africa sector so low, and what can we do to try to improve that? So when we started doing the background sort of reading for the research, we realised that there's actually very little in the literature that talks about the involvement of disabled people in this sector generally. One of the things that was quite interesting about the research as we went along, I think, is that a lot of the findings are relevant to volunteering generally and taking part in causes and campaigns in a general sense. But here, this quote, it says, without the world's 1 billion persons with disabilities, 15% of the world population, being included as both agents and beneficiaries of development, these goals will never be achieved. Yet persons with disabilities are still invisible and often left behind. So this is about the UN sustainability goals. And it goes to the heart of what we've been talking about today. Nothing about us without us. If you want to make a difference for disabled people, you have got to involve disabled people in doing that. So in terms of the research, we're short on time, so don't try to understand the slide. This is just our methodology. So we had a couple of surveys on Twitter where one was trying to engage disabled people directly, another was engaging Wales Africa organisations. And then from that, we then did a number of one-to-one phone interviews and some face-to-face interviews to explore people's perceptions and ideas in a bit more depth. So the findings, specifically for disabled people, 14% of those people who responded to our survey are already involved with the Wales-Africa sector. We expected that to be really small. It's literally just a handful of people. The top 3 reasons for not being involved were people not knowing what opportunities were available to them, having just never considered getting involved with the Wales-Africa sector. I don't have anything in common. I don't know what I could contribute. But probably quite importantly, disabled people had other priorities for their time and energy. We're concerned about the issues that are facing us in our homes, in our local communities, on our own doorsteps. And often we don't have the time or the energy to think on an international level about getting involved there. So in terms of the findings, all of the disabled people who we did an interview with were already active volunteers in different sectors. They're already passionate about making a difference in their local communities. All of them were very, very conscious about the nothing about us without us principle needs to apply to involving African people as well. It's no good us who live in Wales, who have our experience of being a disabled person living in Wales, thinking that we can speak on behalf of disabled people who live in Africa, when actually we might not have an understanding of what life is like and what the cultural differences are. And so everyone who was involved was saying, we want to make sure disabled people from Africa are also involved. And disabled people's organisations in Wales, we spoke to a number of those as well. And the question this man just gave to Rian, about cuts to funding and austerity and capacity, everybody is struggling with that. And also funding is attached to specific criteria around local activity, basically. So funding doesn't cover DPOs getting involved with the Wales Africa sector, even if they had the energy and the inclination to do so. But there is a fair amount of interest So, you start talking to people about opportunities that could be available in the Wales Africa sector for disabled people to get involved, whether it's to show solidarity, whether it's to fundraise, whether it's to collect goods and get stuff transported over, or whether it's to host visits and so on. The interest is there. It's just a case of people knowing what there might be for them to do. When we spoke to Wales Africa organisations, this is quite a unique sector in a way. So there's quite a variety of organisations, and some of them can actually be really, really tiny. You're talking about two people or 5 people in somebody's kitchen having a discussion about the project that they want to do. And so there are a lot of challenges with the fact that these are small organisations, and it makes it difficult for them to think about how might they involve disabled people in the work that they do. And the key areas that they tend to work in are education, health, and livelihoods. So 75% of Wales Africa organisations that we engaged with do deliver services for disabled people in Africa. 58% have disabled people volunteering in Wales, but only 23% have disabled people on their main board, i.e. in a decision-making role. So that's one of the sticking points, is that if you want to deliver more effective services for disabled people, you need to involve more disabled people to do so. But positively, 83% were keen to involve more disabled people in future, although that could just have been them being nice and saying, yes, we welcome everybody. We wanted to kind of get a sense of what are the barriers for organisations with involving disabled people. Capacity was a big one. They already have a limited number of people that they can engage with, and they rely on people coming to them and saying, I'm interested, I'd like to get involved. And then awareness is an issue. If disabled people aren't aware of the opportunities that there might be to get involved, they're not going to come rushing forward to take part in anything. And also accessibility was a key thing, is that many people, they might have offices that are, above a shop in a high street, or they're using venues like pubs or people's kitchens that just aren't necessarily very accessible or inclusive. And also, there's sometimes that bit of concern of people don't have an understanding of different impairments. They don't know what they need to do to support people, to engage them, and I think that makes some people feel a little bit hesitant about specifically trying to involve disabled people. We asked the question, what could disabled people bring to you and to your organisation if they got involved? And I was a bit struck by how many people struggled with answering that, actually. And there was a bit of a spectrum of views there. So one was, well, disabled people don't have anything special to bring, but everybody is different and everybody has something to bring, and we welcome that. The second one, which I had a bit of an issue with when I first saw the summary of the findings, was involvement will increase disabled people's sense of self-worth. And I think to be a bit fair, there's a lot of research that says that volunteering increases everybody's sense of self-worth. So I think people might have been coming at it from that perspective, but as a disabled person, I wasn't entirely comfortable with the way that came across initially. There are challenges in terms of the perceptions around the work that is done and around what is life like in Africa and what is life like for disabled people. And there are challenges about that. But in terms of people just kind of not really recognising what disabled people could bring. They thought that disabled people can act as role models for beneficiaries in Africa. That they can help to challenge perceptions and challenge the way that African communities can view disabled people, because sometimes disabled people are just hidden away in African cultures, and so seeing disabled people from other countries is a way of breaking down those barriers. But more importantly, from our perspective, is that our lived experience as disabled people helps to raise awareness and helps to influence decisions and priorities of development organisations. Currently, less than half of organisations involve disabled people in the design or delivery of their initiatives, and that is something that we want to change because our presence helps to influence the outcomes. And then in terms of the conclusions of the research, the key value of involving disabled people is that you do have role models, you have people bringing their lived experience to the work that you're doing and having an impact through their involvement that way. And then factors that kind of impede the barriers, basically, to our inclusion are the lack of awareness of the ways in which we can get involved in the first place. I learned so much by doing this research that there is so much out there that I just had no idea of in the Wales Africa sector that is really interesting. Then there's capacity as well. One of the key things that came out of the disabled people surveys was we want to know that we are welcome. We want to know that people want us there and that they will make an effort to support us. We don't expect people to have all the answers, but we want to know that they're willing to try. For any engagement to be meaningful, so disabled people want to know that their energy and their time is actually going to make a tangible difference for disabled people or for anybody in Africa who is receiving a service or support through an organisation. And again, really important that they want to see disabled people in Africa being involved in setting the priorities and delivering the services. And the lack of understanding of the differences in culture between Wales and Africa is important to address in order to involve more people. So in a nutshell, that's that. The next steps are already sort of in progress. Donald, you're probably the best one. So there are 3 things. You're going to improve awareness, knowledge sharing. Engagement. Engagement, thank you.